Welcome to Windows on the World. Got a great show for you tonight. Gnosis versus Nihilism and the New Age deception. Gnosis, knowledge, and of course we're going to be talking about the nonsense that has actually replaced knowledge. Well, the word gnosis, or its literal meaning knowledge, is associated with supposedly revealed knowledge of various spiritual truths, especially that said to have been possessed by ancient Gnostics. Well, that is what the internet tells you it means. There was nothing supposedly about it, but of course the degradation of all, which is not of the material world, is the common aim of all those who have been indoctrinated by post-Enlightenment thinking. Social Darwinism is anti-Gnostic, and the real Gnosis would be in direct opposition to it. We're going to be exploring this and these themes in tonight's show, and I think it goes along very nicely with the coverage recently of the cult of the self, the cult of the New Age, and those series of shows that we've done, which are in an article on the homepage at Windows on the World. But strange that those who spout supposedly and things like "it is believed that" are the victims of history's biggest brainwashing program. The brainwashing program that we're in, which is the present. The current Common Core, the New Age, sort of New Age education system of new communitarian Marxism, goes together with the replacing of history with illusion and propaganda. Well, the Gnostic writings were early Christian, which is why they are derided and distorted in the present. They were later declared heretical by Irenaeus. Irenaeus' primary goal in writing against heresies was to attack cults that fell away from Orthodox Christianity, mainly the Gnostics and Marcionites. In particular, he sought to disprove what he saw as incorrect interpretations of Scripture on the part of Gnostics such as Valentinus. Well, just as the Roman Church had said there were only 4 Gospels because there were only 4 corners of the earth, this sort of anti-Gnostic reactionary movement was very typical of the way that the later Catholic Church reacted during the Reformation, and even before that within papal bulls such as Unum Sanctum of 1302. But Irenaeus was one of the first to call out the heretics, yes, the Gnostics, as having written heresies. And we're talking about first century AD onwards, which is when these heretical writings, as far as the church were concerned, began to appear. Of course, all of this is down to Roman cataloguing and their administrative system, which of course cannot be completely trusted. So when we have these Gnostic scripts that were found, and such as the Nag Hammadi texts which were found in 1945 in Upper Nile, Egypt, we have to question how old they actually were, because we're told they're from the 1st and 2nd century up to about the 4th century AD. But of course all of this is probably subject to heavy Roman censorship and propaganda. We're going to talk about Valentinus now. He was living 100 to 180 AD, and he was an early Christian Gnostic who was based in Rome. His followers in Rome were known as Valentinians, and in the West they were known as Marcosians. He taught there, and he stated while in Rome and to his followers that there were 3 types of people: spiritual, physical, and material. Only those of a spiritual nature received the gnosis that allowed their return to the divine, and those of a psychic nature would attain a lesser form of salvation. Those of a material nature were doomed to perish. This is a big part of the Gnostic world, in that the rejection of the material world is paramount, absolutely central to the belief system of the early Gnostics. Well, the Valentinians were the largest and most influential sects of Christianity in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. there were two branches of Christian Gnostic thought. One, that Jesus was the embodiment of the Supreme, being incarnated to bring Gnosis to the earth. The second was that Jesus was human and attained enlightenment through Gnosis and taught his disciples to do the same. The Gnostic Gospels saw no connection between Jesus and the nation of Israel. Well, that is the same as now in a way, because there is actually no connection. The connection was only made comparatively recently. It is stated by academics that the Gnostics were free-thinking mystics who recommended a direct experience of God unmediated by church hierarchy, which of course made them obvious heretics as far as the Roman Church was concerned. Well, Gnosticism included countries such as Egypt and Middle East, Syria, Iraq, China and France, and a lot of the Gnostics were Greco-Roman. The New Age thinking has distorted Gnosis, though, as it has degenerated everything it associates itself with. Well, pound shop spirituality for lost souls has taken over. Anything from the later Kabbalists is also nothing to do with Gnosticism, but is often lumped in with it, as is everything now. We have this melting pot of everything, which means it's actually all about nothing. Well, the Kabbalists degenerated knowledge through their fake leaders and their self-appointed leaders, Sabbatai Zevi and later Jacob Frank. Both these were directly opposite to Gnosticism. So when we see this comparison being made, it has to be rejected from the outset ab initio, because it has absolutely nothing to do with Christian Gnosticism. The Sabbatai and Frankists were degenerate in order to bring chaos to the earth. So their god, in Gnostic terms, would be Lucifer, Samael or Yaldabaoth. The Gnostics were trying to fight the demiurge and overcome it through direct salvation. This is a huge and central part of what Christian Gnosticism was about. The demiurge was the material world which was corrupted and had been corrupted from the start. And the salvation through Jesus Christ and through knowledge was the antidote. So later the Rosicrucians and their offshoots were also Kabbalistic in origin, so also directly opposite to Gnosticism. And today there is a New Age organisation which is as subverted as the UN and its New Age Luciferianism, known as the International Gnostic Movement. It is a mishmash of theosophy, these quotes from Gurdjieff and even William Shakespeare. The idea that the writers of the Shakespeare plays were Gnostics is of course absurd. This Wilderness of the Mind project also included Blavatsky as Gnostic. That's Madame Blavatsky, of course, the Theosophist. And there's no way that she can be described as a Gnostic. Blavatsky actually stated, this is a quote from Madame Helena Petrova Blavatsky, she said, "And now it stands proven that Satan, or the red fiery dragon, the Lord of Phosphorus, and Lucifer, or light bearer, is in us. It is our mind." So, she was a daughter of the sons of Cain and the blind god Samael, the demiurge. This would be the equivalent of blasphemy to Gnostic thinking. Her protege Alice Bailey was also as deluded as Samael, the blind god of the demiurge. This is a quote from Alice Bailey. "I felt that I was like Joan of Arc, and like her I was seeing spiritual visions and was consequently set aside for a great work. I pictured myself as the dramatic and admired teacher of thousands. I was under observation and was doing what he wanted me to do. He told me things were planned. He did not tell me what to do. The masters never do. The master is a busy executive and his job is world direction." So anything to do with theosophy and channeled information of the likes of Alice Bailey is anti-Gnostic ab initio again from the start, because what we see in Alice Bailey is what we see in the New Age narcissism of these people who are indoctrinated with this mishmash of pound shop fake spirituality. So we're going to get on to the Marcionites now. And Marcion preached in Rome around 144 AD approximately, because they don't really know. And Marcion preached that the benevolent God of the gospel, who sent Jesus Christ into the world as the Saviour, was the true supreme being, different and opposed to the malevolent demiurge or creator God identified with the Hebrew God of the Old Testament, that's Yahweh. He considered himself a follower of Paul the Apostle, who he believed to have been the only true apostle of Jesus Christ. In his work against heresies, we're going to get into Irenaeus now, because we're pulling this all together. In his work against heresies, Irenaeus, who lived sometime between 174 and 189 AD, stated, "We do put to confusion all those who in whatever manner, whether by an evil, self-pleasing, by vainglory, or by blindness and perverse opinion, assemble in unauthorized meetings. We do this, I say, by indicating that tradition derived from the apostles of the very great, the very ancient and universally known church, founded and organized at Rome by the two most glorious apostles, Peter and Paul, as also by pointing out the faith preached to men, which comes down to our time by means of the succession of the bishops. For it is a matter of necessity that every church should agree with this church on account of its preeminent authority, that is the faithful everywhere." Well, this attitude, apart from that almost indecipherable word salad, this attitude by the universal church is very similar to their later proclamations in the Fourth Lateran Council of 1215 by the bishops of Rome. There is indeed one universal church of the faithful, outside of which nobody at all is saved, in which Jesus Christ is both priest and sacrifice. His body and blood are truly contained in the sacrament of the altar under the form of bread and wine, the bread and wine having been changed in substance by God's power into his body and blood, so that in order to achieve this mystery of unity, we receive from God what he receiveth from us. Nobody can effect this sacrament except a priest who has been properly ordained according to the church's keys, which Jesus Christ himself gave to the apostles and their successors. Well, there's a lot of assumptions there, isn't there? And on heretics, Irenaeus stated, "We excommunicate and anathematize every heresy, raising itself up against this holy, orthodox and Catholic faith, which we have expounded above. We condemn all heretics, whatever names they may go under. They have different faces, indeed, but their tails are tied together insomuch as they are alike in their pride. Let those condemned to be handed over to the secular authorities present or to their bailiffs for due punishment. Clerics are first to be degraded from their orders. The goods of the condemned are to be confiscated if they are lay persons, and if clerics they are to be applied to the churches from which they receive their stipends. Those who are only found suspect of heresy are to be struck with the sword of anathema, unless they prove their innocence by an appropriate purgation. Having regard to the reasons for suspicion and the character of the person, let such persons be avoided by all until they have made adequate satisfaction. If they persist in the excommunication for a year, they are to be condemned as heretics." So you can see how dogmatic the Roman Church actually was, and this is in their condemnation of heresy from the Fourth Lateran Council, really echoing everything that was said by Irenaeus much earlier. Well, about 1,000 years earlier. So the Fourth Lateran Council updated the whole of this, and we've actually quoted from that in our film The Heretics of London, The Smithfield Martyrs. And it also said that, of course, heretics would not receive a proper burial. And the heresies of the Reformation and the burning of heretics came later in 1401, with the ecclesiastical courts combining with the Parliament to issue common law writs of execution for heretics by being burned alive. So the Roman Church made Gnosticism their enemy as they did with anyone who questioned accepted dogma and their scripture, as in Heretico Comburendo of 1401. And the statute declared, there were divers false and perverse people of a certain new sect, who preach and teach diverse new doctrines, and wicked, heretical and erroneous opinions, contrary of the Holy Church, and they make unlawful conventicles and confederacies. They hold and exercise schools, they make and write books, they do wickedly instruct and inform people, and as such they may excite and stir them to sedition and insurrection, and make great strife and division among the people, and do perpetrate and commit subversion of the said Catholic faith. The Heretico Comburendo urged that this wicked sect, preachings, doctrines, and opinions should from henceforth cease and be utterly destroyed, and declared that all and singular having such books or any writings of such wicked doctrine and opinions shall really with effect deliver or cause to be delivered all such books and writings to the diocese of the same place within 40 days from the time of the proclamation of this ordinance and statute. So, as soon as Heretico Comburendo was announced in 1401, which was an update of all of the Roman Church's opposition to Gnostics, we see that within 40 days of this act, every single book had to be found and burned. And if any person such books in the form aforesaid do not deliver, then the diocese of the same place, every of them may by the authority of the said ordinance and statute cause to be arrested. And if they fail to abjure their heretical beliefs or relapse after an initial abjuration, they would be burnt, that such punishment may strike fear into the minds of others. Well, so much for debate and compromise. Some Gnostic Christians, such as the Marcionites, considered the Hebrew God of the Old Testament as the evil, false God and creator of the material universe, and the unknown God of the Gospel, the Father of Jesus Christ and creator of the spiritual world as the true God. So here we have the opposition to the Old Testament God Yahweh, and this reinforcement that the Father of Jesus Christ and the creator of the spiritual world was the true God and not the God of the Old Testament, which actually makes sense to me, so therefore I would be a heretic. As the Roman Church insisted in Unam Sanctum, the papal bull of 1302, there is one universal church of the faithful, outside of which there is absolutely no salvation. Well, this statement is aligned with the insane and intolerant God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, who the Gnostics rejected as a false God. So let's now go on to some Gnostic texts. The secret book of James is a Gnostic text and was thought to have been written early in the 2nd century as Roman soldiers were closing in on Jesus and the disciples. So Jesus says to the 12 disciples, "So I tell you, be filled and leave no space within you empty, or he who is coming will mock you." This is very typical of the Gnostic writings. In other words, if you are not full of the Holy Spirit, if you're not entirely full of your own awareness and divinity, then the demiurge has an open opportunity to take you, to attack you, to take you over. And as questions from the disciples continue in the secret book of James, Jesus says, "First I spoke to you in parables, and you did not understand. Now I am speaking with you openly, and you do not grasp it." Well, I know how he feels there. Jesus is exasperated by the apostles. He continues, "You wretches, you poor devils, you pretenders to truth, you falsifiers of knowledge, you sinners against the Spirit, do you still dare to listen when from the beginning you should have been speaking? Do you still dare to sleep when from the beginning you should have been awake so that heaven's kingdom might receive you?" This is very prescient to what's going on at the moment, isn't it? It really ties into the false light and the so-called awakening, which of course has turned people into the sleeping. Well, James continues, when we heard this, we were delighted. We had become gloomy because of what we said earlier. But when he saw us happy, he said, woe to you who are in need of an advocate. Woe to you who stand in need of grace. Blessed will they be who have spoken out and acquired grace for themselves. Well, this is really amazing because it does absolutely mirror what is going on now. Those people who are listening to a plethora of watered down repetitive nonsense, especially on the internet, are really what was being referred to then. It's exactly the same mentality. And so it continues, compare yourselves to foreigners. How are they viewed in your city? Why are you anxious to banish yourselves on your own and distance yourselves from your city? Why abandon your dwellings on your own and make it available for those who want to live in it? You exiles and runaways, woe to you, for you will be captured. This is Jesus speaking to the disciples. This was at the time, of course, when the Romans were closing in on the apostles. Blessed will be they who have known me. Woe to those who have heard and not believed. Blessed will they be who have not seen, but yet have believed. Once again I appeal to you, I am disclosed to you, as I am building a house useful to you when you find shelter in it, and it will support your neighbour's house when theirs threatens to collapse. I tell you the truth, woe to those for whom I was sent down here. Blessed will be they who are going up to the Father. Again I warn you, those who exist, be like those who do not exist, that you may dwell with those who do not exist. Do not let heaven's kingdom become a desert within you. Do not be proud because of the light that enlightens. Rather act toward yourselves as I might have toward you. I have put myself under a curse for you, that you might be saved. Well, Peter responded to these comments and says, sometimes you urge us on towards heaven's kingdom, but at other times you turn us away, Master. Sometimes you encourage us, draw us toward faith and promise us life, but at other times you drive us away from heaven's kingdom. The Master answered and said to us, I have offered you faith many times and have revealed myself to you. James, I have revealed myself to you, and you have not known me. Now I see you often rejoicing, and although you are delighted about the promise of life, you are sad and gloomy when you are taught about the kingdom. Nevertheless, you, through faith and knowledge, have received life. So disregard rejection when you hear it, but when you hear about the promise, be joyful all the more. I tell you the truth, whoever will receive life and believe in the kingdom will never leave it, not even if the Father wants to banish him. This is all I shall tell you at this time. Now I shall ascend to the place from which I have come. When I was eager to go, you have driven me off, and instead of accompanying me, you have chased me away. Be attentive to the glory that awaits me, and when you have opened your hearts, listen to the hymns that await me in heaven. Today I must take my place at the right hand of my Father. I have spoken my last words to you. I shall depart from you, for a chariot of spirit has carried me up, and from now on I shall strip myself that I may clothe myself. So pay attention. Blessed are those who have proclaimed the Son before he came down, so that when I did come, I might ascend. Blessed 3 times over are those who have proclaimed by the Son before they came into being, so that you might share with them. So, we can see here why the secret book of James is heretical to the Roman Church, as was anything that they did not control and approve of. So I'm going to have a short break after that. This is very interesting and dramatic stuff. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. welcome back. Now, last week I made an announcement that I was actually in deficit from doing the shows, and I put out a bit of an appeal for people to support the show. And of course we do have a few supporters, but they are few and far between. And in response to last week's show, several people did sign up for £5 a month, and some contributions came in from people who do support the show, and I'm really grateful for that. But please do support the show if you can. I do this as an issue of trust, and the whole way that Windows on the World works is that I do not charge for anything. I have everything on the website open. I do not want to turn this into a subscribers only platform, so please support us, because the overheads have got quite big. In fact, when I looked, as I said last week, I found out that I was actually in deficit because the cost of streaming, subscriptions and website and lots of other things I have to pay for. There's lots of incidental things that go along with this. So do support the show if you can, and I will continue to put out the best information that's out there. And I know from recent live streams and the reaction from the listeners that the content is well appreciated out there. And also I get great feedback from the listeners, which I'm really, really grateful for. So we've just spoken before the break about how things have been subverted, and I couldn't believe this website, which has taken on the mantle of representative of Gnostics, and it's called the International Gnostic Movement. They're a mishmash of Christian slightly, but mainly New Age beliefs, quoting like people like Blavatsky, and of course, as we said, William Shakespeare and even Gurdjieff. And it's a true sign of the times when truth is corrupted in favour of a compendium of cultural appropriation, or for a watered down inclusivity that has nothing to do with its original meaning. So the whole purpose of this show is that everything has basically been appropriated. I mean, you cannot conceive really how this has been subverted unless you go back to the original Gnostic writings. And the thing is that the New Age self-realization and self-help psychology has absolutely nothing to do with knowledge or gnosis. It's got nothing to do with inner wisdom. It's all external. And they go on this website, and they've actually captured lots of different countries through this fake movement. They say, whether it be through the ancient monasteries, esoteric groups, religious orders, schools of yoga and meditation, they talk of these as though they're all lumped together, that they're all part of this new Gnosticism, which of course absolutely is nonsense. They say awakened masters activating the powers of the body of nature and of the cosmos. I mean, this is just really like sort of pound shop theosophy. And they even talk of global awakening. Can you believe it? So Gnosticism has been kind of incorporated into the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Well, who would have thought global awakening? It's actually the opposite of Gnosis, the opposite of what the Gnostics were saying. So in other words, the UN and the global awakening and this fake false light of Samael, the blind god, the Luciferian false light, which has been pushed onto the New Ages, is in direct opposition to Gnostic thought. So it's completely ironic and a huge insult to the writings of those of thousands of years ago that the international Gnostic movement has actually misrepresented the whole basis of Gnosticism. Well, they would be quite happy accepting what the true Gnostics would have known as the demiurge. Yes, the global governance and sustainable development goals is really what they are indeed advocating. These are the useful idiots, the willing dupes who will be led, and in turn they will lead other deluded followers into the false light of which the early Gnostics were fighting against. The Gnostics were not accepting of the false light and spent most of their time countering it and talking of it. In other words, they were actually trying to, in modern parlance, wake people up. But they weren't actually imposing their beliefs on anybody else either. And then, of course, These people then, they bring in the un-Gnostic Freemasons. They actually talk on this website, can you believe it, of Freemasons, Kabbalists, and in the same breath, alchemists and samurais. So this is typical of this pound shop, throw it together, a confluence of everything chucked into a melting pot where nothing means anything. In other words, it's yet another wilderness of the mind projects, a mix of unrelated and opposing movements which they wish to assimilate into, of course, yes, this wilderness of the mind project. And they're very big on theosophy. I was really surprised at this, but, well, actually, I wasn't surprised. I just was kind of seeing it as the sort of disappointment that you find everywhere. Well, the real Gnostics would be aware of every form of false light, every deception, and today would be calling the UN and its agencies the demiurge. Indeed, the incarnation of power, control and deception and evil, which they were fighting from the beginning, is now being used in their name. And there's actually a reference to that in the Nag Hammadi, these group of codices found in Upper Nile, Egypt in 1945. And they actually make a statement in something we're going to be actually looking at in this second half, so I'd better get on with it. Yes, we're going to go now to the Gospel of Philip, and there is a reference to the archons, the rulers. The rulers wanted to fool people since they saw that people have a kinship with what is good. They took the names of the good and assigned them to what is not good, which is exactly what this new movement is about, this international Gnostics movement. They're doing exactly that. They basically have a kinship with what is not good, and they're using people who think that this is good, and they're assigning to these people what is not good. The Gnostics believed that the demiurge was in control of the world and had corrupted it. Well, this is more true today than it was then. In fact, the present enemies are the same now as they were then. The Roman Church has excelled itself in hypocrisy and sold out any Christian ethics it may have had. This, of course, goes to the Church of England, all of which is under the Universal Church. And the Reformed Church of England has become just a group of spineless change agents who are enforcing and controlling the whole of the parishes, the parish areas that they do control officially, and they are turning them into communitarian snitch gulags. I mean, they've got posters up on churches which are so intrusive, and they're incorporating, of course, all these worlds into one world, into the one world religion. And everything is being assimilated and it's being watered down. There is, as I said, I think on an interview during the week, which I will maybe post on the Spreaker channel, because it was quite interesting. We were talking about this kind of false light, this false awakening that has captured pretty much everybody, especially in the alternative media, and of course the New Age. So yes, the same can be said, as I just kind of stated there, that the Reformed Church has been infiltrated and subjugated, taking the side of the false over the true. Well, let's talk now about the blind god Samael, the Freemasonic ruler whom they say was supernatural, or in their words, semi-divine. According to their doctrine, Eve produces a son before she meets Adam. And that son is Cain, the son of the widow. Because Samael left before Cain was born, then Eve was a widow. So Cain was the son of the widow. The Freemasonic widow's son refers to all who are initiated Freemasons, and they have themselves become, through their initiation, they have become sons of the widow and the brotherhood of Cain. So if we go to a very well-known quote from a Freemasonic website, which I archived many years ago. It states, "The Lucifer spirit Samael united with Eve and begat a semi-divine son, Cain. As he left Eve before the birth of the child, Cain was the son of a widow and a serpent of wisdom. So the sons of Cain are ruled by fire. They call themselves the Illumined Brotherhood, Luciferians. They work with the sons of Seth, water, their priestcraft, to control the sons of Abel, also water, whom they believe through their manifesto and biblical interpretations are docile, compliant, and follow the self-appointed leadership of the Brotherhood of Cain, directly opposing Christian Gnosticism. In time and through generations, the sons of Cain became the craftsmen of the world, skilled in the use of fire and metal. Their ideal was male, Hiram Abiff, the master workman. The sons of Seth, on the other hand, became the churchmen, upholding the feminine ideal, the Virgin Mary, and ruling their people by the magic water placed at their temple doors. Various attempts have been made to unite the two streams of humanity and emancipate them from their progenitors, Jehovah and the Lucifer spirits. The sons of Seth, on the other hand, became the churchmen, and various attempts have been made to unite these two streams of humanity and emancipate them from their progenitors. Sorry, I've read that out again. And so the sons of Cain, to conclude, are ruled by the demiurge. They are also of Yahweh, the jealous and spiteful psychopathic God of the Old Testament. This is exactly what the Gnostics rejected. The later Rosicrucians used the Lazarus resurrection story for their mythical archetype Father RC. The story of Lazarus raised from the dead holding the rose, which was to become the symbol of the RC, is important as he was also son of a widow, as allegedly, of course, was Cain. According to the RC, the rose is a symbol of the alchemical blending of the fire of Cain and the water of Abel. This is, of course, how sustainable development works. The banks are the fire, the administration, and even the protest movements, and all of the NGOs, and all of the people enforcing it are the water. They are the administrators. So both the sons of Abel and Seth are ruled by the sons of Cain and are ruled by water. Cain is ruled by fire, and the blending of the fire and water is the aim of the craft, Freemasonry. Their archetype is a murderer who killed his brother. The Brotherhood will also be initiated into murder and have taken an oath which binds them to the sons of Cain for eternity. This is actually what the third degree of Freemasonry is all about. There is no turning back once you have been reborn and emerged from that coffin. Gnostic teachings outline the role of the blind god Samael, or Yaldabaoth. In the Apocrypha of John, Yaldabaoth is also known as both Sakala and Samael. In another Christian Gnostic text, The Nature of the Rulers, there is reference to the blind demiurge, and the text describes who the archons, or world rulers, are, and how the struggle with the archons is to be carried out. It's called The Real Nature of the Authorities. This is the section from The Nature of the Rulers, which was a Christian Gnostic text, and it is included in the Nag Hammadi scriptures, which you can actually download on the free books page at windowsontheworld.net. So, this is the real nature of the authorities. Concerning the reality of the authorities, the great apostle, through the Spirit of the Father of Truth, referred to the authorities of darkness and told us, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the authorities of the world and the spirits of wickedness. I have sent you this writing because you have asked about the real nature of the authorities. So then they talk about the blind demiurge. The leader of the authorities is blind because of his power, ignorance and arrogance. He said with power that I am God, there is no other but me. When he said this, he sinned against the realm of the all. This boast rose up to incorruptibility, and a voice answered from incorruptibility and said, You are wrong, Samael. His thoughts were blind. He expressed his power, that is, the blasphemy he had uttered, and pursued it down to chaos and his mother, the abyss, at the instigation of Pistis Sophia. She established each of his offspring according to its power, after the pattern of the eternal realms above, for the visible originated from the invisible. Incorruptibility looked down into the region of the waters. Her image appeared as a reflection in the waters, and the authorities of darkness fell in love with her. But they could not grasp the image that appeared to them in the waters, for they were weak. And what is only of soul cannot grasp what is of spirit. For the authorities were from below, but the image of incorruptibility was from above. This is why incorruptibility looked down into that region, so that by the Father's will she might bring all into union with the light. So this is a constant recurring theme in Gnostic writings. It's all about this inner truth which comes from inspiration and comes from the awareness of the demiurge and the rejection of the blind God. So we're going to go on to the creation of Adam and Eve, and this is a very interesting part of the text. The rulers made plans and said, "Come, let's create a human of soil from the earth." They formed their creature as a being entirely of the earth. These archons have bodies that are both female and male, and faces that are the faces of beasts. They took soil from the earth and formed their human after their own bodies, and after the image of God that had appeared to them in the water. They said, "Come, let's grasp the image by means of the form we have shaped, so that the image may see its male partner and fall in love with it, and we may seize it with the form we have shaped." They did not understand the power of God because they are powerless. Samael blew into his face, and the human acquired a soul and stayed upon the ground for many days. The rulers could not make him arise because they are powerless. The rulers continue their attempt and their control of Adam. After this, Eve gave birth to Cain, their son, and Cain farmed the land. Then Adam had sex with his wife. Now, this is interesting, isn't it? So it doesn't say that Adam has sex with Eve and then Cain was born. So they're constantly referring to this. And this is, of course, where Freemasonry is, because the god of Freemasonry is the blind god of the Gnostics, Samael, Yaldabaoth. Well, Eve became pregnant again and gave birth to Abel. This is after Cain had farmed the land. Abel was a shepherd. Cain brought in produce from his field, and Abel brought in an offering from his lambs. God looked with favour upon the offering of Abel, but he did not accept the offerings of Cain. Cain, man of flesh, pursued Abel, his brother. God said to Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain answered and said, "Am I my brother's keeper?" God said to Cain, "Listen, the voice of your brother's blood is calling to me. You have sinned with your mouth, and it will come back to you. Whoever kills Cain will release 7 vendettas, and you will live groaning and shaking upon the earth." Adam had sex with his partner Eve again. She became pregnant and bore Seth. For Adam, she said, "I have given birth to another person through God in place of Abel." Eve became pregnant again and gave birth to Noriah. Eve said, "He has produced for me a virgin to help many human generations." Noriah is the virgin whom the forces did not defile, and humanity began to multiply and develop. Well, of course, these texts were heretical, but they contain early Christian writings which were not accepted, of course, by the Roman Church, which utterly rejected them, which doesn't mean that they do not have value, because the insights which one can gain from reading these scriptures, not just the Gospels, but such works as The Rulers Mould Adam. We constantly see that there's a battle against the demiurge, which is the same battle that is going on today. Of course, the demiurge now is global governance. The demiurge is everybody who has been indoctrinated into the new system. The Agenda 2030 goals, sustainable development, the fake left, whatever you want to call it, Marxist communitarianism. This is the demiurge. This is the demiurge of which these people were speaking. It is quite clear, as I think we've explained pretty clearly in this show. But in these shallow, confused and inverted times, Gnostic wisdom has been lumped together with all sorts of nonsense, and as we've said, absorbed into the nothingness of New Age, gift shop, self-help and me, I'm so spiritual mind virus. This illusory world is exactly what the early Gnostics were fighting against. They were officially around from the early part of the 1st century AD, but must have been around a lot longer, as this is the time when the Roman narrative appeared, and basically we can't trust that. The present sources which control the narrative around the subject have their own agenda, and the real Gnosticism is in direct opposition to the usurpers. They are the demiurge whom those with knowledge must be constantly aware of. Being filled within a truth is not for the faint-hearted or easily led. The demiurge is indeed in control of the material world, but their weakness of spirit can be always overcome, and their blindness to truth will be their downfall.